Hi there everyone. Today we got a 2006 Honda Civic sedan. We're going to be replacing a right front axle shaft. Now we can take that nut off. The brake calipers off because we are going to be replacing a bearing on this one, the wheel bearing. We got some 12 millimeter bolts here holding the caliper on. Take those off. And then our caliper comes right off. And we're going to put that right up here on the spring for right now. I will wire that up to secure it here in just a minute. Now we're going to remove the caliper holder assembly. That's a 17 millimeter, 2 bolts that hold it on. There's one. And there's your brake pads right there, the holder assembly, all in one piece. Then the rotor comes off. And this is the hub assembly right here. That's the outer hub, inner hub, and the axle shaft here. The boot broke, so that's why replacing it. The axle joint went bad. Okay, next is we're going to take the tie rod loose from the steering knuckle. So, and then we're going to loosen the nut here and hit it opposite at the same time, and it distorts the metal enough to where this will drop out. The other way, if you have access to it, is a pickle fork, which looks like a tuning fork. And you basically just put it in there, and because it's tapered, as you put it in and you hammer it on the end, this one's for actual air hammer, as it hammers in, then it will force it away and pops it out. Try never to hit it on the nut or the threads if you are to save the part, because that will damage it beyond use. Next step is remove the steering knuckle from the strut. And sometimes the steering knuckle and the strut, where they bolt together, that is how the camber adjustment on the alignment is made. And if that were the case, you would scribe marks in here marking the steering knuckle position in relation to the strut position here. But in this vehicle, that is not the case. Okay, so we're going to remove the ball joint from the control arm. And there's 3. You got 2 nuts here, bolts and nuts, and then there's another one recessed up in there, right there. Ball joint of the control arm right there. We need some more persuasion on the axle shaft. Now I'm not worried about hammering on the axle shaft threads because we're not going to reuse the shaft. And then we take the, and then we just pry out the axle shaft the rest of the way. Sometimes they come out real easily, sometimes they don't. You gotta kind of coerce them. And like I said, see all the rust and stuff built up on there. And you can see how that's all limp. It was knocking real badly when you take turns. There we go. And there's the wheel bearing right here. Okay, the next step is to pull the axle shaft out the rest of the way. Get up in there. There, the transmission. Well, here we're going to try and reassemble the Honda axle shaft and wheel bearing replacement. Okay, so we've got the wheel bearing pressed back into the hub assembly, which I strongly recommend that you go up to a auto parts store that has machine shop availability so you can get that pressed in, unless you happen to have a press available, and do it that way. This is the new axle shaft, getting ready to install it. Put that right in there. Just feed it right through the center. Then I'm going to climb underneath and put it into the transmission. Okay, now got the axle shaft. Splines are in the transmission. We just have to have a little bit of force here to get it in all the way. There's a little clip that engages. That locks it in place. So I put the nut all the way to the end and then just tap it lightly. That way it doesn't mess up the threads. And the next step is take the nut off and put our hub assembly on. There's splines here that line up into the hub. Putting the caliper mount bracket back on. And I'm going to reduce the torque of my gun a little bit. You can see the bolts back there on the back. 17mm bolts. And I'm going to do flat and torque. Good and tight. Okay, double check the spindle to strut bolts, make sure they're tight. Okay, now we'll put the caliper back on. Okay, we got caliper mounted. Mounted up, bolts are good and tight, everything's moving, got rotation, we got the tie rod yet to put on, And then we're going to torque up the tie rod nut here. If I go the right way anyway. Okay, got it tightened down. Now, a lot of times with the tie rod, this is a ball and socket joint. So sometimes if you apply pressure downward, you can get the nut to start threading on there. Otherwise the ball will just spin and the stud here will spin and you will get nowhere with getting the nut tightened down. You have to put your cotter pin back in there, which I have to do yet. Just wanted to mention that. And now I'm going to torque up the axle nut. Last thing is we got to stake down the axle nut to keep it from spinning. So we want to use a you can use a punch, flat nose punch. Even a screwdriver will work. It tends to split the metal though. Yeah, it's a little flat spot right in here. And you just push that down in there and it locks it and keeps it from spinning. And then the last thing is put the tire on, get it down on wheels and ready to go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, please.